Afraid of being judged for her appearance, a young girl decides to hide her face and ends up becoming a meme when she shows up at school with a duck box on her head. Today we're going to recap the story of the series, Ugly Duckling, from 2015. After stealing some items from a stationery store, Plawon is chased by the saleswoman, but manages to escape. Seeing the thief running away, Zero decides to go after him and manages to surround him in the parking lot. At that moment, Plawon tries to run away, but Zero knocks him to the ground. Just as he's about to strike the young man, Minton appears and attacks the bully. Furious at being interrupted, Zero pushes the young man and the two start exchanging punches in the shopping center parking lot. When he gets home, Plawon has to explain to his father what happened while his sister cleans the wound on his elbow. When he discovers that his son is trying to steal from a store, Todd is furious and tries to beat him up. However, the young man manages to escape the beating when he reminds his father that his sister is the real troublemaker in the family. Ever since she was little, Mayunam has always hidden her face under a cardboard box, as she prefers to stay isolated in her room rather than socialize. This decision was made after she was rejected by the young man she liked at school and, since then, she has thought of herself as the ugliest girl in the world. Because of this trauma, Mayunam doesn't even dare to look in the mirror and has lost all the friendships she had built up. Realizing that his daughter was hiding from the rest of the world, Todd did everything to try to help her overcome this trauma, but none of his attempts were successful. So the man makes the difficult decision to force his daughter to go back to school and claims that he has enrolled her in the same school that Plawon attends. When she hears this, Mayunam is reluctant and says that she wants to continue studying at home, but her father is completely adamant about her decision and says that the girl needs to acquire social skills in order to succeed in life. That night, in an attempt to calm his sister down, Plawon decides to help her customize a new box to use at school. The next morning, while walking through the courtyard, Mayunam attracts the attention of her new classmates and despairs when she realizes that everyone is laughing at her. Suddenly, Minton appears and tries to talk to the girl, but on seeing him, Mayunam gets even more nervous and runs away. However, the young man decides to follow her and, while trying to escape her pursuer, the young woman ends up bumping into Zero and his group of bullies. At that moment, the delinquents spread out around the girl and try to force her to take the cardboard box off her head. However, the confusion is interrupted by the arrival of Minton, who shows up to defend Mayunam. When the young man removes his helmet, Zero recognizes him immediately and tries to provoke him, but the young man decides to ignore him and goes into the classroom. A few minutes later, Mayunam has to introduce herself to the whole class and the teacher asks the students to be receptive to her. However, when the girl walks towards her desk, she is humiliated by her classmates and shot with paper balls. During lunch, Mayunam sits alone in the cafeteria and some students try to steal her box. Frightened, the girl runs out into the courtyard and realizes that she has left all her food behind. Suddenly, Minton appears wearing his helmet and strikes up a conversation with the newcomer. Realizing that the girl is hungry, the biker shares his snack with her and is heartbroken to discover that Mayunam wears that box on her head in order to hide her appearance. When he hears the girl complaining about not having any friends, Minton says he wants to be her friend. At the end of class, on her way home from school, Mayunam comes across Minton and Zero fighting in an alley and tries to think of a way to help him. Just then, a teacher appears to break up the fight and Zero decides to flee with his gang, dragging the girl away from the alley with him. While they're hiding, the delinquent rips the box off the new girl's head and Mayunam gets so nervous about someone seeing her face that she faints. Minutes later, the young woman wakes up in hospital next to her father and brother and panics when she discovers that her box has disappeared. Luckily, a doctor appears just in time and uses a mask to cover the young woman's face. The next morning, when he arrives at school, Mayunam goes to settle the score with Zero and attacks him, without even imagining that the day before he was enchanted by her beauty. When the girl leaves, Zero runs after her and tries to understand why she always has her face covered. At that moment, he tries to pull the mask off Mayunam's face, but is stopped by Minton, who pushes him away. Once again, the two students start fighting and hit each other while the girl tries to break up the fight. When the trio are alone, Minton questions why Zero won't leave the newcomer alone and asks if he's in love with Mayunam. Upon hearing this, the bully feels intimidated and says that no one would ever fall in love with such an ugly girl. At that moment, all of Mayunam's traumas surface again and she faints from nervousness. Immediately, Minton supports the girl and takes her home. The next day, the young woman locks herself in her room and refuses to leave the house. In the evening, Zero decides to pay a visit to his classmate, but is met by her relatives, who order him to leave Mayunam alone. In the morning, Minton also drops by for a visit and asks Plawon to help him get closer to the girl. The pair then use breakfast as bait to convince Mayunam to open the door, and Minton claims to have a present for her. The night before, the young man had spent several hours customizing a duck box for his friend and showing her his new helmet so they could go to school together. The next day, Minton picks her friend up from home and takes her to school on the back of his motorcycle. That afternoon, at lunchtime, Zero tries to approach Mayunam to apologize, but Plawan shows up just in time and takes his sister away from the bully. Later, during class, Ozone approaches the duck-headed girl to ask for a favor and reveals that she is being bullied by Zero. The delinquent tore up her homework and stepped on her glasses, but Ozone didn't say anything to the teachers because she's afraid of him. However, the news that Mayunam has confronted Zero has spread around the school, so the girl begs her classmate to ask him to leave her alone. Upon hearing this, Mayunam says she doesn't want to get involved with that guy anymore and advises the girl to tell her teachers what happened. What the young girl didn't imagine was that the next day, other students would approach her to make the same request, because they believe that Mayunam is the only student in the school capable of taking on Zero. After fleeing the crowd, the girl discovers that her younger brother has been involved in a fight and despairs when she sees Plawan being beaten up by a group of bullies. Seeing Mayunam approaching, Zero orders his colleagues to move away and the girl goes to help her brother up. Furious, the duck-headed girl stands up and orders the boy to leave the students of that school alone, because everyone is complaining about him. Confused, Zero asks what he's done and discovers that it's actually his friends who are bullying the other students using his name as an excuse. When he hears this, the young man is furious and beats up his own friends, because the group had agreed that they would never intimidate the weaker ones. While attacking his colleagues, Zero hears Mayunam asking him to stop hurting people, and the young man promises that he will if the girl allows him to see her face one more time. To protect her brother and her classmates, Mayunam agrees to the deal and removes the box from her head. Then Zero says he will keep his end of the bargain. From now on, neither he nor his friends will bother the other students. After hearing this, Mayunam leaves with her brother and walks ashamedly through the corridors with her duck box in her hands. When she meets Minton, the girl hugs him and begins to cry with sadness because everyone has seen her face. When she gets home, Plawan tells his father what happened and Todd gives her daughter a mirror so she can see how beautiful she is. However, Mayunam still doesn't have the courage to look at her reflection in the mirror and decides to go to her room. When she gets there, she realizes that her window is open and, after closing it, she is surprised by the arrival of Zero, who was hiding in the room. After helping Mayunam to calm down, the young man says that he went there to apologize for all the harm he had caused and claims that he lied about her appearance, because Mayunam is the most beautiful girl he has ever seen. After saying these words, Zero leaves and the young woman finally finds the courage to look at herself in the mirror. In doing so, Mayunam realizes that she was wrong about her own appearance, because the truth is that she is a very beautiful teenager. When she finally realizes this, the girl decides to abandon her duck box and, for the first time in a long time, she goes out in public without hiding her face. When she arrives at school, Mayunam notices that all the students are staring at her, and then Minton approaches to compliment her friend's beauty. Later, when she goes to the restroom, Mayunam meets Vivian, the most popular girl in school, and the young woman shows an interest in being her friend. That day, the teacher informs the class that next weekend, the school will be promoting an outdoor trip and all the students will be going on a 2-day field trip. When she returns home, Mayunam finds Zero in his room again and tries to kick him out, but the young man lies down on her bed. Suddenly, Plawan appears and is surprised to see Zero in his sister's room. When questioned about the reason for his visit, the young man asks if Mayunam likes Minton, but the girl refuses to answer the question and kicks the intruder out of her house. On Saturday, the students arrive at the Pine Resort campsite and put on their life jackets to start the day practicing water activities. While Minton and Ozone have fun in the water, Mayunam decides to cool off by drinking juice because she can't swim. However, her plans not to get wet are interrupted when Zero appears and takes the girl to the zipline. After pushing her down, the young man goes after her and the two of them have fun together in the lake. Seeing Zero smiling with the new girl, Vivian begins to feel jealous, as she is completely in love with him. Minutes later, when Mayunam comes out of the water, Vivian decides to go and talk to her and tells her that she has known Zero for over 10 years. According to her, her parents and the young man's parents have been friends for a long time and organized their engagement when they were children. The young woman says that their families intend to marry them off as soon as they graduate from high school and, upon hearing this news, Mayunam is saddened. That afternoon, while she was observing nature, Minton appeared and sat down on the bench next to her. At that moment, the young man gathers the courage to declare himself to his friend and asks her if she would like to be his girlfriend. Upon hearing this, Mayunam is embarrassed and says that she needs time to process her feelings for Minton. So the young man patiently says that he will wait until the young woman is ready to give her answer, and they both walk to the cafeteria. While the couple are having lunch with Ozone, Zero appears and sits down next to Mayunam. At this point, she takes the opportunity to confront him about his engagement, and he says that he never wanted to marry Vivian. It was his parents who forced him to become her fiancé. When he realizes that Mayunam is upset by this news, Zero stands up to make a public speech and says that he will never marry Vivian. When asked about the arranged engagement, Vivian says that she didn't plan to marry Zero either and leaves the cafeteria. Concerned, Mayunam goes after her and apologizes for having caused that embarrassing situation. However, Vivian says that everything is fine and invites her colleague to take part in the ghost hunting activity that will take place that evening. At dusk, the young woman and her friends appear at the agreed location, and the players split into pairs to look for the flags. With Minton's help, Mayunam manages to find the first flag, but when he looks back, the young man spots a person dressed as a ghost and runs away scared. At that moment, the newcomer runs after him and ends up in an abandoned house. When she gets there, she finds her friend, but as it's dark, she can't see his face. Even so, Mayunam decides to declare herself and says that she also likes Minton. At that moment, the couple kiss, and soon after, Vivian and the rest of the group show up. When the lights are turned on, Mayunam realizes she was kissing Zero, and Minton appears soon after. Seeing all those people around her, the girl faints and Minton rushes to her aid after striking Zero. The next morning, Mayunam wakes up in the infirmary and explains to her friend what happened the night before. When he finds out that the girl declared herself to Zero because she thought she was talking to him, Minton decides to forgive her, but asks Mayunam not to go near that troublemaker again. On Monday, when she returns to school, the photo of the couple kissing begins to circulate on the internet, and they are called to the principal's office. After being scolded by her teacher, Mayunam apologizes and says that this will never happen again, because from now on she will stay away from Zero. When she returns to class, she finds out that she has been selected to take part in the school beauty contest, and Vivian will be her competitor. That afternoon, Minton reveals that he has signed up for a swimming tournament that will take place in a few days' time and invites Mayunam to accompany him during training. When he sees the girl he's in love with helping another young man train for the competition, Zero also decides to sign up for the tournament, but has to time himself. During training, he receives a visit from Vivian, and the young woman tells him that he can count on her to support him. However, instead of accepting the help, Zero gets up and leaves, leaving his fiancée alone in the pool. When the big day of the competition finally arrives, Zero has to face his opponent in the school swimming pool, and Minton manages to defeat him. Furious, the loser decides to leave and Vivian goes after him. The young woman then tries to comfort her fiancé and declares her feelings for him, but Zero says he doesn't feel the same way. At that moment, Vivian realizes that her love will never be reciprocated and blames Mayunam for stealing her fiancé's heart. The next morning, Mayunam decides to talk to Zero, as she knows he was very sad after losing the competition. However, when she goes to the pool to look for him, Vivian appears with her friends and manages to surround her. After accusing Mayunam of stealing her boyfriend, Vivian pushes her into the water and cowardly watches the girl drown. When Mayunam is about to drown, Vivian orders Namsam and Mommy to help her out of the pool just so they can all get together to beat the girl. Luckily, while the young girl is being attacked, her friends show up and Minton pushes all the girls away from Mayunam while Ozone helps her friend up. Furious at the injustice, Minton prepares to attack Vivian, but changes his mind when Mayunam asks him to stay away from the girl. After the attack, Mayunam says she needs to be alone and once again uses a cardboard bag to hide her face. She then walks alone through the streets, but is followed by Zero, who waits for the right moment to approach her. While talking to the girl, he notices that she is hurt and hugs her. He then asks her what happened, but Mayunam refuses to tell him the truth. So Zero decides to take her home and they both meet Minton at the gate. At that moment, Mayunam says goodbye to Zero and says she was very frightened by the way Minton treated Vivian. Upon hearing this, the young man apologizes for his behavior and Mayunam thanks him for helping her before she hurt herself even more. After saying goodbye to her friend, the girl enters the house and her father is furious to see her like that. But instead of telling him what happened, Mayunam says she'll sort everything out the next day. In the morning, one of Vivian's friends posts a video of Mayunam drowning and, after finding out what happened, Zero goes after her. When he meets Vivian, the young man says that he thought they could be friends, but now he doesn't even want her friendship, because after everything that has happened, he hates her. That afternoon, at the end of class, Mayunam walks to the bus stop and realizes that she is being followed by a young man. When the young woman gets on the bus, Zero goes after her and asks who the guy is who started chasing her, but Mayunam doesn't recognize him. Minutes later, they get out of the vehicle and the girl is almost run over, so Zero attacks the driver. After assaulting the man, he is taken to the police station and has to call his lawyer to get out of there. At this point, the young man is lectured by Mayunam and the girl asks why he overreacted when she wasn't even hurt. In an attempt to explain himself, Zero reveals that when he was a child, his younger brother was hit by a car and perished, but the driver was never arrested. At this point, Mayunam finds out why the young man has become so bitter and tells him that he doesn't have to act violently all the time. Hours later, when she arrives home, the young woman sees Minton sitting on the sofa next to her father and discovers that the video of Zero fighting with the driver has gone viral in the school group. Furious at her father's reaction, the girl goes to her room and wonders if she is beginning to have feelings for the two young men. The next day, when she leaves school, Mayunam runs into the young man who was chasing her and he introduces himself as Ter. The young man says that he was among a group of children who made fun of Mayunam's appearance when she was in elementary school and apologizes for that day. At this point, Ter also asks the girl to forgive Minton, because he was the one who rejected her at school and started telling her she was ugly. Upon hearing this, Mayunam becomes furious and returns home. When she gets there, she calls Minton and arranges to meet him the next morning to talk. When she finds him, the girl reveals that it was he who rejected her at school and told her she was ugly. The young woman blames him for all the years she spent locked in her room without the courage to look in the mirror and says she doesn't want to see him again. At this point, Minton reveals that he tried to find Mayunam to apologize, but she had left school. He says he only did it because he was afraid of being ridiculed by his friends, but he never really thought the girl was ugly. A few years later, he met Todd and told him everything that had happened, so the man asked Minton to get close to his daughter and befriend her in order to make amends for his mistake. Upon hearing this, Mayunam goes to her father and says she hates him for trying to trick her into letting the person who hurt her the most get close to her again. She then runs to the park and meets Zero, who advises her to go home and face the situation instead of running away. When she gets there, Mayunam is attacked by two guys on a motorcycle who throw acid at her, but Zero uses his body as a shield to protect her. When he tries to catch up with the men, Minton ends up being run over and collapses. While Mayunam visits Minton, Vivian goes to Zero's room to check on him and the young man claims to know that she is the one behind the attack. Furious, the young man orders her to leave and asks Vivian never to look for him again. When the girl leaves, Mayunam enters the room and thanks Zero for risking his life to protect her. Minutes later, Minton wakes up and is happy to see Mayunam by his side. Immediately, the young man begins to apologize for what he did in the past and asks for forgiveness for not telling the truth. The following week, the girl finds out that Vivian has left school to study abroad. That day, Minton prepares a surprise for Mayunam and gathers a group of students on the school lawn so that everyone can watch him propose to her. In this way, he believes he will be able to make amends for the mistake he made years ago. In front of all those people, he asks Mayunam to marry him, but the young woman refuses, because after everything she has discovered, she is no longer in love with him. Despite this, Mayunam is very grateful for the friendship they have built and hugs Minton before seeing him off. At that moment, Zero approaches and proposes to Mayunam, who accepts his proposal on the condition that he stops being so violent towards people. When she gets home, Mayunam breaks the news to her father and Todd is in despair when he finds out that his daughter is dating Zero. However, he knows that the couple will meet in hiding if he tries to make it difficult for them to date, so he decides to accept this relationship, as it will make it easier to keep an eye on his daughter. The next day, the couple decide to go for a walk in the park and Todd sends Plawan to keep an eye on them. After taking some photos, Mayunam says she needs to go to the toilet and her brother offers to accompany her there. In the meantime, some bullies approach Zero and start making fun of him. The gang has discovered that the young man has promised his girlfriend that he won't use violence anymore, so they take the opportunity to attack him. Determined to keep his word, Zero doesn't fight back and is left all bruised up. Minutes later, when Mayunam returns to find her boyfriend injured, she is furious because she believes he got into a fight of his own free will. The next day, after having lunch with Minton, Plawan is walking home when he is surrounded by the same gang that attacked Zero. When he realizes that he can't take down all those guys by himself, Minton orders Plawan to flee and they both run into an abandoned building. While hiding, they end up being found by the bullies, who beat them mercilessly. Then Zero shows up and helps Minton beat the crap out of those guys. However, Plawan ended up being seriously injured during the attack and had to be taken to hospital. When she finds out that her brother has been attacked by Zero's enemies, Mayunam goes after him and breaks off their relationship. However, the next morning, when he wakes up, Plawan explains to his sister what happened and says that if Zero didn't show up to save him, he could be eliminated. Upon hearing this, Mayunam runs to meet the young man and asks for forgiveness for having made a hasty decision. After apologizing, the young woman says she wants to get back together and they both decide to give their relationship another chance. So what did you think of this series? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more series recaps. See you next time.